Okay guys, so it is a quiet Sunday afternoon. I have my afternoon coffee prepared here, which by the way is a coconut milk cappuccino. I didn't only use the coconut milk, by the way, it's just a mixture of coconut milk and regular milk, just in case you were curious. I'm going to now put that aside and I'm just going to sip it slowly throughout the video. I hope you can see my pajama pants because I'm in my pajama pants literally. I wanted to do a second part of my makeup collection series and I wanted to show you my bronzers, and essentially these are all of my contour powders and bronzers. You can see I don't have that many because I don't really feel like I need all that many. This is more than I will never ever need in a lifetime. So I'm just going to go through them, show you everything, we can swatch stuff, and you know, it's just going to be a chill hangout video. Okay, so let's start with the only contour powder that I have, and that is Giant from Notoriously Morbid. I don't really contour, which is why I only have one contour powder and it's from an indie company. I feel like most contour powders really don't suit my skin tone. This one works really well for me though, and I really like the tones of it. It's like a slightly pinkish, not super pigmented powder, and it works really well. You can definitely see it has those more greyish tones to it, which is why it works really well as a contour powder, but quite frankly I don't use it very often because, like I said, contouring is not really something that I do on a regular basis. While I don't like contouring that much, I actually do really enjoy bronzing quite a bit, and I think I'm going to do this kind of in chronological order. So I'm going to start with my oldest bronzer over here, and that is the Tarte Park Avenue Princess bronzer. I bought this quite a few years ago and it has quite a dent in it. I don't know whether you can see the little dent there is in there, but this is a great bronzer. I don't really know why I'm not using it as much anymore. I feel like I just got so many other bronzers that I figured this one got a little forgotten. But it's a nice matte bronzer. It doesn't have cool tones to it, especially when you compare it to the contour powder from Notoriously Morbid. It's much warmer, but it's also not too warm. It has a very light color to it, so it would definitely suit people with lighter complexions. So my next favorite bronzer is this one from the Body Shop. It's their Honey Bronzer, and the shade that I have is the 01, which is I think probably the lightest or one of the lightest shades that they offer. It's a beautiful bronzer. I love the formula of this, and it's one of those underdog products that nobody ever really talks about, but it's actually a great product. This is once again a very light bronzer, and compared to most of my other bronzers, it also leans a little bit more pink rather than warm. You can see it barely even shows up if I put it like this and I just swatch it. Let's try to swatch it a bit more heavily. So when I bought this bronzer, I basically was looking for something that I can use as a contour powder slash bronzer because I just didn't feel like contouring was something that I wanted to do. And when I bought this, I was actually pretty happy because it shows up exactly as I wanted to. It's not a contour powder and it's not a bronzer, and it's just such a nice buildable formula. I absolutely love this bronzer, and I always recommend it to people who are especially starting up with bronzers because it's a very easy formula to work with. My next bronzer is a cult favorite, and I think everyone and their grandmother owns this bronzer, but it is a really good bronzer. It is the Butter Bronzer from Physicians Formula. Mine is in the shade Bronzer. Oh, it says Muru Muru. Is that the shade? Is that the shade name? I don't know. It's called like this. I do believe this may be the darker shade, so I do think there is a shade lighter than this, but you know, for me this is already pretty light. This is another bronzer that has a really lovely formula to it. This one and the Body Shop one I was using like crazy at some point. They were the only two powders that I would put bronzer wise on my face. This is also a very light color, so this would definitely not work across skin tones, and Physicians Formula really needs to expand their shade range for this bronzer because it's such a nice bronzer. In comparison to the Body Shop one though, you can clearly see that this one leans a bit more like yellowish. It has almost more like camel tones to it, and that's what I really like about this bronzer. I really like the shade of it because it's not too pink, and I feel like for my personal skin tone, bronzers that lean a bit warmer, like a bit more mustardy, even reddish, look better than anything that has more pink tones to it. Next up we have another cult favorite product, and I do believe I bought this because of the hype that there was around it. This is the Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer in medium deep. So this is a slightly deeper bronzer, and I really have to be careful with this because if I over apply it, it can get crazy really fast. This is the shade. I do find that this bronzer works for me, and it especially works for me more in the winter rather than in the summer, because in the summer I always gravitate more towards like warmer, reddish, orangish almost types of bronzers. But this one is definitely much more pigmented and much deeper than the other two bronzers that I showed you so far. And you can definitely see that it has slightly more gray tones to it. I mean, it's not too gray, so it's like something in between a warm and a super gray bronzer. It's like the perfect middle. So if you have the right skin tone, this is going to probably work beautifully on you. In the summer it just doesn't work well with my skin once I get a bit more tan, because I tend to get more yellow when I'm tan, and then this really grays me up. But in the winter, when I'm at my palest, this works beautifully. And as an added bonus, it smells deliciously like chocolate. Like every time I open it, I get a whiff of that delicious coconut chocolatey scent, and I absolutely love it. I know a lot of people have a problem with all the scented products from Too Faced. Personally, I don't. So this next one is a bit of a sentimental purchase for me, and one that I look to and I immediately have a recollection of a certain place and a certain time. So this is the Tarte Park Avenue Princess Pink Bronze, and this has a really weird formula. I think a lot of people probably disliked this because it's really difficult to pick up the product. It has this beautiful like pattern to it, and then you kind of mix up all the shades, and then you're supposed to get like a pinkish bronze kind of situation, and you can get that, but you have to dig your brush in there really hard, and it gets a hard pan really quickly. There were two shades of this bronzer when I was... Okay, so backstory. I picked this up when I was in Canada 2 years ago. I had a conference in Vancouver, well, near Vancouver really, not in Vancouver, but after the conference I went for a couple of days to Vancouver, and of course I shopped like crazy at the Sephora on Robson, and this was one of the things that I picked up, which is why this is a product that I look at really fondly, because it immediately reminds me of those few days in Vancouver, which I absolutely loved. Like I said, the other bronzer, when I was looking at both of them, I couldn't even pick up to swatch properly. I think it was supposed to be like the more orangey version, but I couldn't even pick up enough to swatch on my on the back of my hand. This one, however, swatched really beautifully, and at the time I still thought Tarte was a great company. Not so much anymore, not for any other reason, but because they've become so boring, and I don't really know what's up with Tarte. They used to make great products and they used to be innovative, and now they've lost their way. Tarte, find your way. Let's try to swatch this a little bit, and I'll try to really dig into this so that I can swatch it for you. I do really like this. I know it's difficult to pick up, but once you put it on your skin, it has a little bit of... So one thing I forgot to mention about these bronzers, most of them are matte. The reason I love this one and the Butter bronzer so much is because they are not flat mattes. They have a little bit of a sheen to them, and I do prefer that in a bronzer. So when you put that on your cheeks, it really has a little bit of like that pinky, coppery, orangey tones to it, and it just kind of warms you up, and I really like that. So then we're getting into some of my most favorite bronzers. So the first one I want to show you is this one from Makeup Geek. This was a release from last year, and this is in the shade Sunkissed. This is their shade for fair skin, and if you look at it in the pan, you would almost think that this wouldn't show up on me, and this is exactly what I was worried about when I first got it. But surprisingly, this fits me quite well. It has a beautiful, soft, buildable formula to it. I don't know whether you can already see the dip that I've made in it. I'm definitely going to hit pan on this soon. But just like the Butter bronzer, this has very mustardy yellow tones to it. I would say these are almost dupes for one another. There are very slight differences between them. And just like with the Butter bronzer, this is not a flat matte. It kind of has a little bit of a sheen to it, which I really, really like. My hand has acquired quite a bit of tan now, so I'm not really even sure you can see this properly. But can you see these slightly more like yellowy tones to it? I do use it quite a bit more like in the early spring and winter time, just because once I tan I can't really pull it off anymore because it doesn't show up. Next we have one of my absolute favorite bronzers for the summer. This is the MAC Studio Sculpt Defining Bronzing Powder in Delphic. Mine comes in this packaging because it was part of the MAC something with a tribe. Vibe Tribe? I want to say Vibe Tribe. Who cares? Doesn't matter. You can definitely get this blush just in their regular line, but it just wouldn't be in this packaging. This is one of my absolute favorite bronzers to wear in the summer because it has delicious warm tones to it, it has a beautiful sheen, and there is just something about the undertone of this bronzer that works really well with my skin tone. I do gravitate to it more in the summer rather than in the winter, just because it's so warm that in the winter it kind of feels off if I use it. But in the summer I absolutely love this bronzer. Do you see the warmy deliciousness that this is? And again, it has a sheen, it's not a flat matte. I highly recommend this bronzer if you do actually purchase from MAC and you're on the lookout for a nice summer bronzer that will last you a lifetime. Okay, speaking of summer bronzers, let's talk about her. So this is the Chanel Soleil de Chanel bronzer, which I bought, I believe, last year, sometime in the early summer. This is one of those luxurious makeup products that one doesn't really have to have, but when they do, it just makes them feel happy on the inside. The only reason I bought this is because I had heard so many people say good things about it and I just wanted to feel bougie. That's it. No other reason. I'm sure you can definitely get other products, but you know, I just wanted something luxurious to treat myself. And it is a beautiful bronzer. That being said, it is one of my favorite summer bronzers, and it's the one that I always take with me when I go on holiday. Also, it is the only bronzer that I have with like a cream formula, so that's something different about it as well. And I do really like the tones of it. Again, you can clearly see those like warmish, orangey, yellowish tones, and you can definitely see cat hair in there too, because cream products and cat hair just go very well together. This is a swatch for this bronzer. It's very easy to work with. It's a beautiful, like, moussey type of formula that you can easily put on with a brush, or you can even use your fingers. I normally use either my brush, so a nice dense brush like this, and I just dip into it, and then let me show you. So what I normally do is I just pick it up like this on my brush, and then I'll just stipple it on my under my cheekbones, or on my cheekbones where I want the bronzer to be, and then I kind of blend it out if necessary. But it's just such an easy product to work with. You can definitely find cream bronzers that are, first of all, cruelty free, and second of all, not as expensive elsewhere. But like I said, I wanted something luxurious and I wanted to feel special and bougie, so I bought this. And my very last bronzer purchase is from this year, and that is the Anastasia Beverly Hills bronzer in the shade Rich M. So when I was doing my research into which shade I wanted to buy, I really didn't want to go for a shade that I already have in my collection, and I definitely wanted to pick up something which maybe has a little bit of like deeper tones to it, so that I can definitely wear it in the summer when I'm a little bit more tan. And it seemed from a lot of the promo photos that you can make the darker shades work for lighter skin tones if you go in with a light hand. And it also seems like this bronzer has like more like reddish coppery tones to it, which is what I really love wearing in the summer. And I do actually think that this has exactly the tones that I was looking for. I think a lot of those new bronzers from Anastasia do have these sort of reddish tones to them. So as you can see, the color is quite deep. And I'm not really sure you can see it right now. If I put it on my cheeks, it definitely pulls a little bit more like reddish tone. Here you can't really see it, but it is a somewhat deeper bronzer, and the formula is a very finely milled powder that you have to be very careful with, because especially if you have a shade like this, which is a little bit deeper than you are, if you go in with too much product, you are going to look super crazy, super fast. So when I work with this bronzer, I normally choose a very like fluffy, sparse kind of brush. This is a brush that I recently spoke in disappointing makeup products video. This is the Spectrum A04. I have two of these brushes and I love the sister of this brush, which is the pink and purple one, because it's a beautiful highlighter brush. But this one, as you can see, is like a totally different brush altogether. And while I dislike using this brush as a highlighter brush, I do love using it particularly with this bronzer, because it picks up product very gently and then you can blend it out very nicely, and the two just work together very nicely. And that was it, lovely folk. Those are all of my like bronzers that I currently have in my collection. I have a fairly modest bronzer collection because, you know, I don't really need that much bronzer in my life. This is probably going to last me 10 lifetimes. I do like to try different formulas every now and then and different undertones, but I feel like this kind of covers all of my bases. So, I'll see you for the next makeup collection series video, which is probably going to be on my blushes.